The first humans to die in the void weren't soldiers or explorers. They were diplomats. Ambassador Sarah Chen watched through the observation deck as the Ketheri warship's plasma cannons charged with an ethereal blue glow. Around her, the other members of Earth's First Contact delegation pressed against the reinforced windows, their faces pale with dawning horror. "They are not responding to our surrender signals," whispered Dr. Marcus Webb, Earth's lead xenobiologist. His hands shook as he clutched the translation device that had taken humanity 15 years to perfect. Sarah felt the weight of 3 billion souls pressing down on her shoulders. Earth had spent decades preparing for this moment, first contact with an advanced galactic civilization. They had imagined 1,000 different scenarios, but never this. Never the cold, calculated execution of an unarmed diplomatic vessel. The Ketheri ship fired. The UES Harmony, humanity's first interstellar diplomatic vessel, died in a burst of superheated plasma. Sarah's last thought before the hull breached was a prayer that someone, somewhere, would tell Earth what had happened here. But someone did survive. Captain Rex Morrison, commanding the escort frigate UES Defiance, watched his diplomatic charges die from 30,000 kilometers away. His ship's weapons were primitive compared to the Ketheri vessel, but Rex had something the aliens didn't expect: pure human rage. "All hands, battle stations," Rex commanded, his voice steady despite the fury burning in his chest. "We're going to make those bastards pay." The Defiance's nuclear torpedoes struck the Ketheri ship's shields like mosquitoes against a windshield. The alien vessel didn't even bother to retain fire. Instead, it transmitted a message that would echo through human history. Primitive species 7834 Gamma has demonstrated unacceptable aggressive tendencies. By order of the Galactic Council, this species is hereby classified as a Class 5 threat and sentenced to permanent quarantine within their base system. Any attempt to breach the quarantine barrier will result in complete sterilization of the homeworld. Rex's tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, turned from her console with wide eyes. "Captain, we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. They are building something." Within hours, the truth became clear. The aliens weren't just establishing a blockade, they were constructing a prison. Massive orbital platforms materialized at the edge of the solar system, each one bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Energy fields crackled between them, forming an impenetrable barrier that would contain humanity for eternity. The journey back to Earth took 6 months. Rex had plenty of time to think, to plan, and to rage. When the Defiance finally entered Earth's orbit, the planet below was already mobilizing for war. President Helena Vasquez met Rex personally at Luna Station. Her eyes held the same fire that burned in every human heart since news of the massacre had reached Earth. "Captain Morrison," she said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, "I'm promoting you to Admiral and placing you in command of Project Phoenix. Our best minds have been working around the clock since we received your transmission. We know what we're up against, and we know what we have to do." Rex studied the holographic displays surrounding them. Earth's military-industrial complex had transformed overnight. Every factory, every shipyard, every research facility had been converted to a single purpose: breaking free from their cage. "The Council thinks they've trapped us," President Vasquez continued. "They see humans as nothing more than violent animals that need to be contained. They're about to learn how wrong they are." The hologram shifted, showing sleek warship designs unlike anything humanity had ever built. These weren't the crude, bulky vessels of Earth's early space program. These were predators, crafted by a species that had learned to fight in the darkness between stars. "We're going to build an armada," Rex said, understanding flooding through him. "But how? We're cut off from the galaxy. No allies, no resources beyond our own system." President Vasquez smiled, and it was an expression that would have terrified any council member who witnessed it. "Admiral, you're thinking like the enemy wants you to think. They see our isolation as a weakness. We're going to make it our greatest strength." She gestured to another display showing mining operations throughout the solar system. Asteroids were being harvested at an unprecedented rate. Mars had become one massive shipyard. The moons of Jupiter were being converted into research stations where humanity's brightest minds worked to reverse engineer every scrap of alien technology they could analyze. "The Council has given us something they never intended," President Vasquez explained. Time. Time to prepare. Time to innovate. Time to become something they never imagined possible. When we break through their barrier, we won't be the same species they imprisoned. We'll be something new. Something they should have feared from the beginning. Rex felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the scope of what Earth was planning. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about transformation. Humanity was going to forge itself into a weapon that could challenge the very foundations of galactic civilization. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Our scientists estimate the barrier will hold for 50 years, President Vasquez replied. 50 years to build not just an armada, but an empire. When we emerge, the galaxy will learn that exile was the worst mistake the Council ever made." Outside the station's windows, Earth spun in its ancient orbit, but everything else was changing. Humanity had been cast out of galactic society, branded as monsters and caged like wild animals. Now they would prove the Council right about one thing: humans were dangerous. They just had no idea how dangerous they were about to become. 25 years after the exile, Admiral Rex Morrison stood on the bridge of humanity's first true warship. The UES Retribution stretched 12 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull crafted from materials that didn't exist in nature. Every surface gleamed with the dark purpose of its creation. "Final systems check complete, Admiral," reported Captain Elena Vasquez, the President's daughter who had grown up dreaming of the stars humanity could no longer touch. "All weapon batteries online. Quantum drives at full power. We're ready for the breakthrough test." Rex nodded, studying the tactical displays that showed the Council's barrier shimmering at the edge of the solar system. For 25 years, humanity had thrown everything they had at that energy wall. Every probe, every missile, every experimental weapon had been absorbed or deflected. The barrier had seemed absolute, but humanity had learned to think differently. "Dr. Chen, report," Rex commanded. The elderly scientist, daughter of the diplomat who had died in first contact, looked up from her console with exhausted eyes that burned with inherited purpose. "The quantum resonance torpedoes are loaded and armed, Admiral. If our calculations are correct, they won't try to break through the barrier. They'll convince the barrier they are already on the other side." It was brilliant, and it was purely human. Instead of fighting the alien technology with brute force, they had learned to think like the technology itself. The torpedoes contained quantum-entangled particles that existed in superposition, simultaneously inside and outside the barrier until observed. Once fired, they would collapse into reality beyond the prison walls. "Fire," Rex commanded. The Retribution's forward launchers released 6 torpedoes that flickered in and out of existence as they approached the barrier. The alien energy field, designed to repel matter and energy, detected nothing to stop. The torpedoes phased through like ghosts. On the other side, they exploded with the fury of contained suns. The barrier flickered. For just a moment, a gap appeared in humanity's cage. "All ships, execute breakthrough protocol," Rex broadcasted across the fleet frequency. "Today, we remind the galaxy that humanity will not be contained." The fleet that emerged from Earth's solar system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 200 warships, each one a masterpiece of human engineering and alien-inspired innovation. They moved with predatory grace, their quantum drives leaving trails of twisted spacetime in their wake. But the ships were only part of humanity's transformation. Rex stood at the center of a bridge crew that represented something new in galactic history. They were the exiled generation, humans who had grown up knowing their species was banned from the stars. They had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chen, the xenobiologist's son, managed the fleet's tactical networks with inhuman precision. His neural implants, developed from alien technology fragments, allowed him to process battle data faster than any organic mind should have been able to handle. Commander Sarah Kim, now Rex's strategic advisor, had spent decades studying every known Council species through intercepted transmissions and captured technology. She knew their weaknesses, their fears, their tactical doctrines. More importantly, she knew how to exploit them. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Kethri border fleet," Commander Kim reported. "They are demanding our immediate surrender and return to quarantine." Rex smiled, remembering the faces of the diplomats who had died 25 years ago. "Put them through." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the elongated features of a Kethri naval commander. The alien's expression radiated the same arrogant superiority that had sentenced humanity to exile. Primitive humans, the Ketheri began. Your violation of Council decree cannot be tolerated. Return to your system immediately, or face annihilation. I have a counter-proposal, Rex replied, his voice calm and measured. Surrender your fleet, and we might let you live long enough to deliver a message to your council. The Ketheri commander's features twisted in what might have been laughter. You dare threaten a council fleet with your primitive vessels? We have defended galactic civilization for 10,000 years while your species lived in caves. That was your first mistake, Rex said quietly. You gave us 25 years to prepare. Your second mistake was assuming we're still the same species you exiled. He cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. Execute Operation Prometheus. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The human fleet didn't charge forward like primitive barbarians. They didn't rely on superior numbers or brute force. Instead, they demonstrated something that no council species had ever mastered: perfect adaptive warfare. The Retribution's quantum torpedoes phased through the Ketheri ship's shields as if they weren't there. When the aliens adapted their shield frequencies, the humans switched to gravitic mines that compressed spacetime itself. When the Ketheri began evasive maneuvers, human ships split apart into smaller units that reformed in different configurations, turning from battleships to fighter swarms to artillery platforms in seconds. But the most terrifying aspect of the battle wasn't humanity's technology. It was their mindset. Every human crew member fought with the fury of a species that had been caged, studied, and dismissed. They fought with the bitter knowledge that the galaxy had tried to erase them from existence. The Ketheri fleet lasted exactly 37 minutes. As the last alien warship exploded in brilliant plasma fire, Rex opened a communications channel that would reach every inhabited system in the galaxy. People of the Galactic Council, he began, his image broadcasting across 10,000 worlds. 25 years ago, you exiled humanity from galactic civilization. You called us primitive. You called us dangerous. You tried to cage us like wild animals. He gestured to the baining wreckage of the Ketheri fleet drifting around his ship. You were right about one thing. We are dangerous. But you made a critical error in judgment. You assumed that danger was a weakness to be contained rather than a strength to be respected. The transmission continued, carrying Rex's words to billions of alien minds that had never imagined humans could break free from their prison. The exile is over. Humanity has returned to claim our place among the stars. But we're not seeking membership in your council. We're here to build something better. An empire founded on the principle that no species should be caged for the crime of being different. Rex paused, letting the weight of his words settle across the galaxy. To those who stand with us, you will find humanity to be loyal allies and protectors. To those who stand against us. He gestured again to the wreckage. Ask the Ketheri how that worked out for them. The transmission ended, and humanity began its second phase of expansion. They weren't just breaking free from their cage. They were transforming the very nature of galactic civilization itself. The Council had created something they never intended, a species that understood both the power of unity and the necessity of strength. Now they would discover what happened when you tried to destroy something that refused to die. The Terran Empire's capital ship, UES Dominion, hung in the void above the Andorian homeworld like a dark promise of humanity's new reality. Admiral Rex Morrison, now Supreme Commander of the Terran Fleet, watched through the command center's vast windows as surrender negotiations proceeded on the planet's surface. It had been 10 years since the breakthrough. 10 years of relentless expansion, tactical brilliance, and diplomatic revolution. The galaxy was learning that humanity didn't conquer. They liberated. Commander Chen, status report on the Andorian integration, Rex ordered. Marcus Chen, now enhanced with quantum neural interfaces that made him as much machine as man, interfaced directly with the fleet's data networks. The Andorian leadership has formally requested incorporation into the Empire, sir. They are offering complete technological exchange and military alliance. Rex nodded, but felt no satisfaction. The Andorians were the 47th species to voluntarily join the Terran Empire. Each one had made the same choice: submit to the Council's ancient tyranny or embrace humanity's promise of genuine freedom. The pattern had become predictable. Humanity would arrive at a Council member world, not with invasion fleets but with something far more dangerous: the truth. They showed enslaved species what their protectors had really been doing for millennia, using them as resource farms, suppressing their development, keeping them dependent and weak. "Sir, incoming priority transmission from Admiral Vasquez at the Rigel front," reported Commander Kim, now humanity's chief intelligence officer and coordinator of what they called the Liberation Wars. Elena Vasquez appeared in holographic form, her face bearing the hardened expression of someone who had spent a decade fighting in the darkness between stars. "Rex, we've got a problem. The Council is mobilizing their core fleets. All of them." Rex felt his blood chill. The Council's core fleets were legendary, ancient armadas that had maintained galactic peace for 10,000 years. Each one commanded by species so old and powerful that younger races considered them gods. "How many ships are we looking at?" he asked. "Conservative estimate. 50,000 vessels. Maybe more." Elena's image flickered as her transmission passed through combat zones. "They are not just trying to stop us anymore, Rex. This is an extinction fleet. They mean to wipe humanity out of existence." The bridge fell silent. Even with their rapid expansion, the Terran Empire could field maybe 8,000 ships. The mathematics of the situation were brutal and simple. Humanity was about to face annihilation. But Rex had spent 35 years learning that impossible odds were just another tactical problem to solve. "All department heads, emergency conference in 15 minutes, he commanded. "And get me a direct line to Emperor Morrison." The irony wasn't lost on him. Humanity had overthrown Earth's democratic government and installed his younger brother David as emperor. Not because they wanted tyranny, but because they needed someone who could make decisions at the speed of warfare. Democracy was a luxury for peaceful times, and these were not peaceful times. David Morrison appeared on the secure channel, his face bearing the weight of commanding a species at war with the galaxy. "I assume you've heard about the Council mobilization." "Just got word from Elena. David, they are not playing games anymore. This fleet could sterilize every world we control." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the absolute authority that had made him the most powerful human in history. "Rex, I'm authorizing Project Lazarus. Full implementation, all resources." Rex felt his heart skip. Project Lazarus was humanity's final gambit, technology so advanced and dangerous that they had hoped never to use it. It represented the absolute limit of human innovation and alien-inspired engineering. "Sir, Lazarus could destabilize entire star systems. The risk is acceptable when the alternative is extinction," David interrupted. "How long do you need?" Rex ran the calculations in his head. Lazarus would require rebuilding the entire Terran fleet with technology that barely existed even in theory. They would need to revolutionize their military doctrine, their tactical systems, their fundamental understanding of warfare. 6 months, he said. "Maybe less if we push production beyond safety limits." "You have 4 months," David replied. "After that, we fight with whatever we have." The next 4 months transformed humanity yet again. The species that had been caged and dismissed 35 years ago now undertook the greatest military-industrial mobilization in galactic history. Every human world became a factory. Every asteroid was converted into raw materials. Every citizen became a soldier in the war for survival. But the most dramatic changes were in the humans themselves. Rex stood in the modification chambers aboard the Dominion, watching as volunteers underwent procedures that would have been considered mutilation just decades earlier. Neural interfaces that allowed direct control of starship systems. Genetic modifications that enhanced reflexes to superhuman levels. Cybernetic implants that turned human minds into living tactical computers. "Admiral, the first batch of Genesis-class soldiers is ready for field testing," reported Dr. Sarah Chen, now head of human enhancement research. Her own modifications were subtle but profound. Eyes that could see across multiple spectrums. Neural pathways that processed information faster than any organic brain had a right to manage. Rex looked at the volunteers emerging from the modification chambers and saw the future of humanity. They were still recognizably human, but something more. Something the galaxy had never seen before. "How many can we produce before the Council fleet arrives?" he asked. 50,000 enhanced soldiers, fully integrated with Lazarus-class combat systems, Dr. Chen replied. "But sir, there's something else. The modifications are spreading. Volunteers are exhibiting capabilities we never programmed. It's as if the human genome is actively evolving in response to the enhancements." Rex nodded grimly. Humanity was changing faster than anyone could predict or control. They were becoming something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that adapted not over millennia, but over months. Each generation of enhancement built on the last, creating capabilities that surprised even their creators. The Council had tried to cage humanity to prevent them from becoming dangerous. Instead, they had created something far worse, a species that thrived on adversity and grew stronger with each challenge. Dr. Chen, continue the research. We need every advantage we can get. Rex turned to leave, then paused. And Doctor, make sure the modifications are permanent. After this war, there's no going back to what we were. As he walked through the corridors of the Dominion, Rex reflected on humanity's transformation. They had started as exiles, become an empire, and were now evolving into something beyond either. The Council's extinction fleet would arrive to find not the primitive species they remembered, but something that would redefine what it meant to be human. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their absolute refusal to accept limits on what they could become. The Battle of Proxima Centauri began not with weapons fire, but with a transmission that echoed across 50 star systems. Admiral Rex Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Infinity, humanity's first Genesis-class dreadnought, as the largest fleet in galactic history emerged from hyperspace. The Council's extinction armada stretched across the solar system like a metal storm, 63,000 vessels representing every advanced species in known space. At the fleet's heart was the Eternal Judgment, a vessel so ancient and massive that primitive species had once mistaken it for a moon. Its captain was Hierarch Zovan of the Ethereal Collective, beings of pure energy who had guided galactic civilization since before most species had discovered fire. Aberrant humans, Zovan's voice resonated with the authority of 10 millennia. Your corruption of natural order ends here. The Council offers final mercy. Submit to immediate sterilization of your homeworld, and your colonies will be granted swift execution rather than prolonged suffering. Rex looked around his bridge crew and saw something that would have terrified any Council observer. His officers weren't just human anymore. Commander Elena Vasquez had undergone neural fusion with quantum processing cores, her consciousness existing simultaneously across multiple realities. Dr. Marcus Chen had integrated alien biotech with human genetics, creating sensory capabilities that bordered on prescience. Even Rex himself had accepted modifications that enhanced his tactical awareness beyond organic limitations. Hierarch Zovan, Rex replied, his voice carrying to every ship in both fleets, I have a counter-proposal. Humanity offers the Council one final opportunity to evolve beyond your ancient fears. Join us in building a galaxy where strength comes from diversity, not conformity. The response was immediate, laughter that rippled across the Council fleet's communications networks. To them, the idea of primitive humans offering them anything was beyond absurd. Your species has existed for mere centuries, Zovan replied. We have maintained galactic peace for 10,000 years. You are insects presuming to instruct gods. That, Rex said quietly, was your final mistake. The battle that followed rewrote every tactical manual in the galaxy. The Council fleet attacked with the overwhelming force that had crushed rebellions for millennia. Plasma barrages that could boil oceans, gravity weapons that compressed matter into neutronium, reality-warping devices that deleted sections of spacetime itself. But they were fighting an enemy they couldn't understand. The human fleet didn't dodge the attacks, they absorbed them. Every Genesis-class ship was equipped with adaptive hull technology that learned from damage and evolved countermeasures in real time. Plasma that should have melted armor instead fed power systems. Gravity weapons that should have crushed ships were redirected to accelerate human vessels to impossible speeds. All ships, execute Protocol Prometheus, Rex commanded, using the ancient human myth of stealing fire from the gods. What happened next defied every known law of warfare. The human fleet began to split, not into smaller ships, but into entirely new configurations. Single vessels became swarms of fighters that could recombine into capital ships at will. Damaged ships merged with intact vessels, sharing resources and consciousness until the fleet became a single, adaptive organism. But the most shocking moment came when the Eternal Judgment itself targeted Earth. Cleanse the source, Hierarch Zovan commanded, and the ancient vessel's primary weapon began to charge. The energy signature was so massive it would be visible from neighboring galaxies, Enough power to crack a planet's core and sterilize every trace of human life. Rex watched the weapon charge and felt absolutely no fear. Elena, initiate Lazius protocol. All frequencies. Commander Vasquez smiled, her enhanced consciousness touching systems across the entire human fleet. With pleasure, Admiral. The Lazius protocol was humanity's most closely guarded secret. While the Council had assumed humans were simply building bigger ships and better weapons, they had actually been solving a far more fundamental problem: how to make death irrelevant. Every human consciousness in the fleet existed simultaneously across multiple quantum states. When the Eternal Judgment fired its planet-killer weapon, it struck not just Earth, but 12 alternate versions of Earth existing in parallel dimensions. The weapon succeeded in destroying all of them. But the humans didn't die. They simply shifted consciousness to the undamaged realities and continued fighting. Impossible, Zorvan transmitted, his voice carrying the first note of genuine fear anyone had ever heard from an ethereal. Nothing survives quantum-dimensional annihilation. You're right, Rex replied. Nothing does survive it. But we're not nothing anymore. We're something you created when you tried to cage evolution itself. The human fleet began its final offensive, and the Council forces discovered that their enemy had been holding back. Human ships that had seemed damaged revealed themselves as transformation matrices, reshaping into configurations that shouldn't have been possible. Weapons that appeared to miss their targets had actually seeded space with quantum mines that activated across multiple timelines simultaneously. But the most devastating revelation came when individual human ships began displaying capabilities that matched the Council's most advanced vessels. A single Genesis-class frigate engaged the Ketheri flagship in direct combat and won, its human crew adapting to alien technology faster than the aliens could adapt to human tactics. This ends now, Hierarch Zovan declared, and the Eternal Judgment began to glow with energies that predated stellar formation. I invoke the Entropy Protocol. This entire system will be deleted from reality itself. Rex felt a moment of genuine respect for his ancient enemy. The Entropy Protocol was a weapon of absolute last resort. It would indeed erase the system from existence, but would also consume the Council fleet in the process. Zorvan was choosing mutual annihilation rather than accept defeat. All human ships, prepare for dimensional shift, Rex commanded. But instead of fleeing, the entire Terran fleet moved toward the Eternal Judgment. What are you doing? Zorvan demanded. Something you never learned, Rex replied. We're not running from entropy. We're embracing it. The human fleet reached the Eternal Judgment just as the Entropy Protocol activated. Reality began to collapse, space-time folding in on itself in patterns that would erase everything within 100 light-years. But instead of being destroyed, the human ships began to feed on the collapsing reality. Their Genesis-class technology had been designed not just to adapt to any environment, but to thrive in impossible conditions. The more extreme the situation, the faster humans evolved to meet it. When the entropy field finally dissipated, only one fleet remained intact. The Council forces had been deleted from existence, but the humans had survived by becoming something beyond existence itself. Rex stood on his bridge and looked out at stars that were subtly different from before. The entropy weapon had shifted them to a parallel universe, but humanity had followed them here too. Open a transmission to all remaining Council worlds, he ordered. It's time they learned the truth about what they created when they exiled us. The war was over, but humanity's transformation had only just begun. 5 years after the Battle of Proxima Centauri, the galaxy had learned to fear silence more than war. When human ships arrived at a star system, they didn't announce themselves with weapons fire or demands for surrender. They simply waited, their dark holes patient as black holes, until civilizations chose their own fate. Emperor David Morrison stood in the observatory of New Terra, humanity's capital world, watching as representatives from the lost free Council species approached through hyperspace. The Vorthan Collective had held out longer than any other civilization, their crystalline ships powered by technology that predated most stars. But even they had finally requested an audience with the Terran Empire. Your Majesty, Admiral Rex Morrison reported from the command center, his consciousness now distributed across 17 quantum matrices simultaneously. The Vorthan delegation is requesting permission to enter the system. They are claiming diplomatic immunity under the old Galactic Accords. David smiled, remembering when such accords had meant something. Grant them safe passage, Rex. Let's hear what the last defenders of the old order have to say. The transformation of humanity had accelerated beyond all projections. What had begun as necessary wartime modifications had become something far more profound. Humans were no longer bound by the limitations of organic biology, linear time, or even individual consciousness. They had become something that ancient species would have called gods, if gods could be both infinitely creative and absolutely ruthless. The Vorthan ambassador materialized in the observatory as a pattern of living light, her crystalline form refracting the star's radiance into prismatic beauty. She was ancient beyond measure, her consciousness spanning millennia of galactic history. Emperor Morrison, she spoke through harmonic frequencies that bypassed human ears and spoke directly to the mind. I am resonance of the first light, speaker for the collective. We come not as conquerors or supplicants, but as scholars seeking to understand. David gestured to chairs that adapted their molecular structure to accommodate her energy form. Understand what, exactly? What you have become, she replied, her light form flickering with what might have been uncertainty. When the Council first encountered your species, we saw primitive beings driven by emotion and conflict. We believed containment was necessary for galactic stability. We were incorrect in our assessment. That's one way to put it, David said dryly. The Vorthan continued, our analysis of the entropy battle suggests that humanity has transcended the traditional boundaries between matter and energy, between individual and collective consciousness, between linear time and quantum possibility. You exist simultaneously across multiple states of reality. This should not be possible for any carbon-based species. David looked out at the stars that now served as humanity's playground. Dyson spheres under construction around each one, not to harvest energy but to use entire star systems as processing matrices for human consciousness expansion. Reality itself was becoming humanity's canvas. We were never just carbon-based, he explained. The Council's mistake was assuming that biology determines destiny. What we've learned is that consciousness is infinitely adaptable. When you caged us, you forced that adaptation to accelerate. But at what cost? The Vorthan asked. Our quantum archaeologists have detected timeline fractures throughout human-controlled space. Reality itself is becoming unstable. You're not just changing yourselves, you're changing the fundamental laws of physics. Rex's voice materialized around them, his consciousness no longer requiring a physical body. That's not a bug, it's a feature. The universe as it existed was too small for what humanity is becoming. The Vorthan's light form pulsed with what might have been alarm. Do you understand what you're implying? You're talking about rewriting the basic structure of existence itself. Only the parts that don't work, David replied. The Council created a galaxy where the strong preyed on the weak, where ancient species suppressed the development of younger ones, where conformity was valued over innovation. We're building something better. And if that process destroys everything that exists? David was quiet for a long moment, considering the weight of the question. Through the quantum network that now connected every human consciousness, he could feel the thoughts of billions of his species. They were no longer bound by individual perspectives or limited lifespans. They had become a collective intelligence that spanned galaxies and could contemplate existence on cosmic scales. Then we'll build something new from the ruins, he said finally. That's what humans do. We adapt, we overcome, we transform. The Council tried to prevent that transformation by caging us. Instead, they accelerated it beyond anything we could have achieved on our own. The Vorthan flickered, her energy patterns betraying deep distress. We have monitored 17 different parallel dimensions where humanity was never exiled. In all of them, your species remained within normal evolutionary parameters. It was only the isolation, the pressure, the absolute necessity to transcend your limitations that created this. This, David repeated, gesturing to the impossible architecture of New Terra, where buildings existed in folded spacetime and human children played with toys made of compressed starlight. You mean our empire, our freedom, our refusal to accept the limits you tried to impose on us? I mean your potential to unmake reality itself, the Vorthan replied. Our oldest archives speak of species that transcended too far, too fast. They became so powerful that existence itself couldn't contain them. They simply vanished, taking entire regions of spacetime with them. David felt the collective human consciousness consider this possibility and reach a unanimous conclusion. Then we'd better make sure we have something worthwhile to replace it with. The Vorthan's light form began to fade as she prepared to return to her fleet. We came here hoping to find a way to coexist with what humanity has become. But now we see the truth. There can be no coexistence between gods and mortals. We will retreat to the far galaxies and hope that when you complete your transformation, you remember mercy. Wait, David called out. You have another choice. The Vorthan paused in her dissolution. Join us, David said simply. Humanity isn't trying to rule the galaxy. We're trying to evolve it. Every species that has embraced our vision has found something they never knew they were missing. The freedom to become more than they ever thought possible. And those who refuse. David's smile held the infinite patience of a species that had learned to think in geological time. Nothing happens to them. They continue existing in the spaces we leave behind. But they don't get to dictate limits on what others can become. The Vorthan ambassador considered this for a long moment, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns that spoke of deep calculation. Perhaps exile was indeed the worst mistake the Council ever made. Not because it failed to contain humanity, but because it succeeded in unleashing something that the universe was not prepared to receive. After she departed, David stood alone in the observatory, watching as human vessels moved between stars like thoughts between neurons. The galaxy was becoming something unprecedented. Not a collection of competing species, but a single, evolving consciousness that happened to span multiple realities. The Council had exiled humanity to prevent them from becoming dangerous. Instead, they had created something that would reshape the very concept of existence itself. The greatest irony was that they were doing it not through conquest or destruction, but through the simple human refusal to accept that anything was impossible. Humanity had been caged, dismissed, and marked for extinction. In response, they had become infinite. And they were just getting started.